The moment the knife caught the flicker of the bus's failing overhead lights, something inside the crowded Chicago bus went silent. Breaths stalled. Muscles tensed. Fear spread faster than sound. Two thugs had crossed a line they would never be able to step back over. They didn't know it yet. The taller one leaned in, his hoodie casting his face into shadow, his voice low and mocking as he whispered threats at the quiet man seated by the window. The second thug laughed loudly, shoving a trembling nurse nearby, enjoying the power that fear gave him. The passengers looked away. No one moved. No one dared. Then the shorter thug made the mistake that changed everything. He lifted his boot and kicked the German shepherd lying calmly at the man's feet, as if the dog were nothing more than an inconvenience. The bus jolted. The shepherd rose instantly. No bark, no snarl. Just focus. Amber eyes locked onto its handler, waiting, controlled, disciplined, trained. The man slowly lifted his head, and when his eyes met theirs, the noise of the bus seemed to fade, because what stared back at them wasn't fear, it wasn't anger, it was something colder. Measured, calculated, terrifyingly calm. His name was Mason Carter, 34 years old, active-duty U.S. Army officer on emergency leave, a man who had survived ambushes overseas, carried wounded brothers through gunfire, and learned exactly how violence begins and how it ends. Now he stood, moving with quiet precision, placing himself between the thugs and the passengers. No shouting, no threats, just presence. "Step back," he said, not loud, not angry, final. His hand rested lightly on the shepherd's collar, grounding the animal while every instinct in the dog screamed readiness. The taller thug laughed and flashed the knife closer to Mason's chest, unaware that he had just closed the distance Mason trained for, the distance where fights ended in seconds. When the thug lunged, Mason moved. A twist, a redirect, a controlled strike using the narrow aisle to his advantage. The blade clattered away. The shepherd held position, teeth bared, eyes locked, silent, lethal, waiting for command. The second thug tried to run, shoving passengers aside. Mason hooked his arm, drove him down, and pinned him with efficient force. No rage, no revenge, just control. By the time the bus screeched to a halt, both men were disarmed, restrained, and groaning on the floor. The silence that followed was broken only by shaky breaths and the soft whine of the shepherd as Mason knelt to check him for injury. What Mason didn't know yet was that these weren't just street thugs. Sirens' lights soon washed the bus in red and blue. Officers dragged the men away as passengers stared at Mason differently now, not with fear, but awe. The nurse he'd protected whispered a broken thank you, her hands still trembling. Mason only nodded. Praise never sat right with him. One officer paused, studying Mason's posture, the dog's discipline, the way both of them scanned their surroundings without realizing it. "Army?" the officer asked quietly. Mason hesitated, then nodded. That was when things stopped being simple. Detectives arrived, names were checked, records flagged. The men Mason stopped were connected to a violent robbery ring known for retaliation. An unmarked SUV rolled up. A man in a dark coat stepped out, flashing federal credentials. "You just made yourself a target." That night, Mason didn't sleep. He sat in his brother's apartment, city lights bleeding through the window, the German shepherd at his feet, ears twitching at every sound. When his phone buzzed before dawn, he answered, without hesitation. "They know who you are, and they're coming." The next 24 hours were pure instinct, preparation, positioning, patience. When the attack came, it failed. Sirens followed, arrests were made, the entire ring collapsed thanks to the evidence pulled from that bus. Days later, Mason stood at another bus stop. Winter sunlight broke through gray clouds. The shepherd sat calmly beside him once more. He wasn't looking for trouble. He never was. But Chicago learned something that day, that strength doesn't always announce itself,
that heroes don't always wear uniforms, and that sometimes the quiet man and his loyal dog are the last people you should ever underestimate.